just finished working the heel flap of our sock, and now I'm going to show you how to pick up the stitches for your gusset. So now that we've shaped our heel here, we're actually going to start picking up the stitches on the side to create our gusset, which is this part here. That is what we call the gusset. And it's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to show you how to do it here. So what we're actually going to be doing, we're going to be picking up stitches on the right and left side of our heel flap here. And because we slipped that first stitch when we were working that heel flap, we have this beautiful row of stitches here that's going to make it really easy for us to just pick up those stitches here. Just along here, you can see those little line of V's. So I'm just going to take my needle and insert it underneath those two loops. I hope you can see it here. So basically just insert underneath that V with your needle there. Wrap my yarn and just pull the yarn through, creating a new stitch there. And I'm going to do that into every single stitch down the side of my heel flap. Just inserting my needle, wrapping my yarn, and pulling that yarn through to create a new stitch on the needle in my right hand. So I want to make sure, as I've worked all the way to the bottom, I want to make sure I'm not going to create a little gap here. So I'm actually just going to insert my needle into a loop here, anywhere really, and just pick up another stitch just to make sure that there isn't going to be a little gap there. So it should look like this. And then I'm now going to move back to those stitches that I actually left idle before we even started working the heel flap. And I'm just going to pull my needle through here. And we're going to want to continue working in the magic loop method. So my loop is going to be here. So I pulled my needle through here. I'm just going to work these stitches here in the same way I've done before. So we're working in stocking stitch, so I'm just going to knit those stitches across the top of my foot. Make sure that first stitch is a little bit tighter so we don't have that gap. And I'm just going to knit across all of those stitches on the top of my sock. I'm just knitting those last stitches like this. And I'm going to do the same thing again on this side of the heel flap as I did on the other side. I'm just going to be picking up those stitches again all the way up to the heel. And because we want to work in magic loop, I'm going to pull my needle through, but making sure that there's still a loop there. So I don't want to pull my needle all the way through, just a little bit, so I can make sure that there's still a little bit of a loop here. I can move my stitches up this needle here because I'm not using that one right now, so that won't really matter. And then I'm just gonna take my needle and I'm gonna do the same thing again that I did on the other side. I'm actually just gonna pick up a kind of a random stitch here before I work up the side, just to make sure that there isn't gonna be that gap. So I'm just gonna insert it here maybe, it doesn't really matter, wherever feels good for you. And pick up that stitch. And then do the same thing that I did on the other side now. And I'm just gonna insert my needle underneath that stitch, so underneath those two loops, that V, so to speak. I'm just gonna pull my yarn through and create those new stitches. I'm gonna do that all the way up to the top until I meet the other needle again. Go. I've done that all the way up that side of my heel flap too. And as you can see, I've got all of my other stitches on my left hand needle, and I'm just going to basically continue knitting across those other needles that are just waiting there on my left hand side. Rather than pulling through and working a magic loop, I'm just going to leave my stitches on my right needle and just continue working in knit stitch until I get to the end of that needle, which is basically the end of where I picked up those other heel flap stitches. Knitting all of my stitches to the end here. There we go. And now, as you can see, my stitches are perfectly divided between the top and the bottom of my foot, or of my sock. And there's quite a lot of stitches here on this needle, but it might feel a bit awkward, but don't worry, that will be over quite soon. So that's the top of my sock here. And the bottom of my sock is on the other needle. All of those stitches here are going to be the bottom of my sock.